welcome back. You're in the web. My name is Willie Wideman Pleasant, and the host today of Willie's Web. And you're going to be so happy that you stayed in the web, because I have fantastic, bigger-than-life person sitting in front of me. He began a career as a freelance and news photographer. He worked with United Press International, Boston Black Weekly, the Bay State Banner, New York Times, I can go on, Ebony Magazine, Black Enterprise. His editorial and documentary assignment has taken him throughout the United States, Latin America, Africa, China, Europe. His proudest moment was serving as Nelson Mandela's photographer when he first visited. With a great support team, he has released a book called Portraits of Purpose, and we'll talk about that later. But right now, I want to talk about him. I want to talk about the things that he's done in his life and why. We want to know the person behind the effort. His name is Don West.
Pleasure to be here.
So, okay, let's talk.
Yes.
I want to know you. I want to know, and I'm sure the audience want to know. They see your book, they buy your book. They don't know who you are. Maybe they do. They probably do. But I want them to know the personal side of you.
Well, I guess it starts back in my early years growing up in Brookline, Massachusetts, that at that time informed me of racial realities, actually. This was the 40s and 50s in Boston, and racial reality was somewhat balanced, but there were certain realities that you knew where you were to be and not to be. And that particularly became very aware to me when I went to high school, because that's when your social life really starts. And I was really ostracized from that. I was one of about 3 black families in Brookline, and I think that my parents moved there because of the educational system. Brookline, I think, was one of the second best school systems in the country at the time. So that's where we were, but of course we were living within an environment that was not always supportive. So that kind of reality left an awareness in me. I'll give you just a little story from those days. We lived near Braves Field. Now, not many people know today what Braves Field was. That's where Boston University has their dormitories on Commonwealth Avenue. But the Boston Braves, the baseball team, used to play there. And Sam Jethro, I believe, was one of the first black baseball players to play in Boston, because the Red Sox were very far along before they brought in a black player. The Braves started very early. Well, at that time, where could Sam stay? Where could he live? Because the surrounding area was all white. Well, my parents knew a number of different people within our community, and it became known that we lived near Braves Field. So he came and lived with us for a while.
Nice.
So that was a very interesting reality for me and for our family, but it just kind of showed us, too, what the reality of skin color in that environment was. So he wasn't there forever, but he stayed with us for a while till he could
But a little bit of history.
Yeah.
A little bit of history.
So that kind of awareness informed me as I went into life. And later in life, when I became a professional photographer, particularly here in Boston, it came back to support my desire to uplift the images and the awareness of black people through my photographs.
Now you talked about surviving in the world, and you said in it, but not of it. Your father, you learned that, and you're probably talking about a little bit of it now. But can you elaborate on? Because I thought that was very. I remember my father talking about the South.
Well, but then you bring it up, well, you could bring it from there, from wherever a black person was, when you live in it and not of it. You're in it, but you're really not of it, because you don't, just as I was saying in that social situation in my high school days, I was there, but I was in it, but I was not of it. I was not part of it, in other words. And so many of us living in certain circumstances in cities. We're there, we do our work, we live, but we're not in really the social milieu of the whole environment of a given place. So I think that's where that came from.
Did at any point in time doing your photography, you said you picked your camera up because you wanted to, you can be up close and you can kind of be in the face without being...
Well, that's the in it, but not of it. Yeah. Just to give you another illustration, though, of that in it, my father, like many black men, went through the experience of being a Pullman Porter in his young years, and then he went into the post office. Now, we know that those were the two best jobs we all could get at that time, but he advanced through the post office and became to a higher position. But he still was, again, in it, but not of it,
Right.
you see. He was participating, he was being successful, but he wasn't really, he went, he did his job, but he came home.
Now, is it any point in time that you felt that you were part of it?
Well, when I got to Boston, I mean, there's a lot between when I grew up
Right.
and when I really started to be. Photography has always been a part of my life since my teenage years, but it's always been in the background. Mm-hmm. It came into the foreground in about 1980 when I came back to Boston. I lived in other places, and I became a photographer with the Bay State Banner newspaper here in Boston and United Press International. And in that such situation, it kind of really focused me on the feelings I've had all of those years and gave me a purpose.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of leading up to this book that we're going to talk about in a minute, right?
Yeah, that's the magic word.
The magic word in a minute? The book.
Both.
Both. Okay, we have been conversating with Don West, and he's given us a little snapshot of his life. But we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back, and we'll talk to your other half of the person who had to work on this book. We'll talk to Kenneth Cooper. So don't go anywhere. Stay right there. I'm giving you